You are finished. Mayor can't save you. Nobody can, especially the boy genius from New York.
I removed any distraction, eliminated every excuse. Your family, your cronies, liquor.
The Oscars are coming up in a few days, and I figured I haven't done a video in almost half a year, but I really wanted to get my opinion out on the Best Picture nominations, especially since my very first video on this channel was about the Academy Awards. So this is gonna be a top list. I'm gonna rank all the movies that are nominated for the category of Best Picture, but please remember that I have only seen every film on the list once. And also remember that it is just my opinion. And without further ado, let's get started with number 8 and my least favorite Best Picture nominee. Sound of Metal presents the issue of hearing loss in a very realistic way, presented through the fantastic sound design and also put into a, well, fine and compelling story. Sadly, the film has a lot of lost potential. While it is creative and it does something that not a lot of films do, it still doesn't take any real risk, and it could have gone way further with its very immersive presentation. It could have done something almost transcendental, something along the lines of a fantastic film like The Diving Bell and the Butterfly by Julian Schnabel, but sadly it cuts between different perspectives, which makes it kinda jarring. Even more uninteresting is the film's cinematography, writing and direction, but the most overrated aspect about the film is the acting. I still to this day don't think that Riz Ahmed is a great, heck, probably not even a good actor. It's not that he is bad in Sound of Metal, but he also didn't do anything to really write home about. Nomadland is an emotionally potent and beautiful film. It is pretty realistic, captured with some pretty good and pleasing cinematography. Frances McDormand again shows her great acting skills and plays this character very honestly. It is a very truthful portrayal of the type of life, and it has a little bit of philosophy sprinkled into it. Chloe Zhao's directing style reminds me a bit of Terrence Malick and a bit of Richard Linklater, mixing this very lively and active filmmaking of Malick with the very humanist and realistic Linklater direction. Chloe Zhao doesn't surpass both of these filmmakers, but she surely shows that she has a lot of potential. Sadly, that potential is gonna be wasted on a Marvel movie. And also sadly, the film not just gets inspiration from both of these directing styles, but is also just copying them in a lot of ways, and it gets incredibly pretentious and repetitive after a while, which makes the film feel a bit pointless. It is a weird film that has so much to do and sets up so many things, but it doesn't feel like it accomplishes a whole lot throughout its entire runtime. And it seems like this is the film that most people predict will win. So I guess, it's a fine film, but not Best Picture worthy in my opinion. I appreciate Citizen Kane, but I was never really the biggest fan of it. It's incredibly influential and important to film history though, so when David Fincher, one of the best directors working right now, decided to make a film about the creation of Citizen Kane, I was kinda excited for it. Mank is technical perfection. It captures the period perfectly, with all the fantastic aspects like cinematography, production design, sound design, and Reznor and Ross's score, which is probably my favorite thing about the film. And for being a period piece drama, it's pretty phenomenal. But I see no point of it existing except for getting the Oscars. Everybody did a great job on this film, but nothing really screams at me outside of the technical perfection that it should win Best Picture, because it just seems like an unimportant story. Because the importance of Citizen Kane alone is already enough. So why create this film if there really isn't that much to show? It just seemed kinda pointless to me. Aaron Sorkin created some incredible scripts in the past decade, and The Trial of the Chicago 7 is really not an exception to that. but it really heavily feels like cheesy Oscar bait and very crowd pleasing, which is not always necessarily a bad thing, but especially at the end of the film it goes off the rails and it becomes very unpleasant to watch in a weird way. I also think the editing was pretty bad at parts, and goddamn, I still cannot bring myself to like Eddie Redmayne. It still is a pretty good dialogue-driven film though, only enhanced by incredible performances from Sacha Baron Cohen, Jeremy Strong and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Everything below this film were films that had a lot to them, and I still rated them fairly high because of that. But with The Father we go into the territory of films that I actually really love. It's a film from the view of a distorted and disorienting reality, progressing and spiraling down into more and more disorientation and confusion. A tragic downward spiral which gets increasingly more painful and heartbreaking to watch with every minute, enhanced through the phenomenal one and only Anthony Hopkins, who brings not just the best performance of the year, but also his personal best in decades. The film could have fallen into this weird category of films that tackle a heavy subject and therefore is seen as a good film, but actually isn't good. Thankfully, Florian Zeller knows how to craft a good story and a great film with his direction. It might be a bit predictable in its unpredictability, it might be a bit emotionally manipulative, visually kinda boring, and it could have gone just a little bit further in its creative presentation. But the film stands out as an incredibly emotionally effective and phenomenally acted film. The final scene is maybe my favorite scene of the entire year, and especially towards the end. Since it gets more and more heartbreaking with each minute, the film is not just a drama anymore, but also a horror film. Scarier than any slasher or monster flick ever could. You Can't Kill a Revolution. Judas and the Black Messiah is definitely one of the films that I wouldn't mind to see win. It was portrayed in very intelligent ways to tell the story and the passage of time. The screenplay is fantastic and it shows a very emotional and enraging or infuriating narrative. The film also had a lot of great music, a good use of songs, and a pretty great score to enhance the impactful experience. If you know the story, it's obviously a bit predictable, especially the ending, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's an incredibly heartbreaking ending, a tragic ending with that. And then the text explanation of what happened afterwards at the end, that shit broke my heart. Oh, and how could I forget the acting? Lakeith Stanfield is amazing in this. Kaluuya brings a good performance as well, and I can't talk about this movie without talking about Jesse Plemons, who again, as previously in the year as well, on a movie which was extremely snubbed, brings a stellar performance. I wish the movie would have been a bit more visually appealing though, especially the cinematography, more specifically the framing. There are shots in this thing which genuinely kind of irritated me, because they looked so weirdly thought out in its composition. I also didn't like the use of colors, like blue and red in the film, which at parts seemed kind of and a bit out of place. But that is just partially an issue for me, since a lot of the other parts in this film look fantastic too. Although there were some scenes where something like, for example, a shootout happens, and it's almost shot in an action movie style way, like a James Bond film or something, which was a bit irritating as well. There are also some weird dream sequences, or something along those lines, as well as some romantic sequences in Judas and the Black Messiah, which didn't work for me that well. But it overall is a really great film. Lee Isaac Chung's Minari is a tender, intimate, and emotionally exhausting slice of life family drama about the immigrant experience, but also filled with some great symbolism. Especially towards the final 20 to 30 minutes, it becomes extremely heartbreaking. Definitely one of the best narratives of the entire year, presented in a somewhat dreamy way with its cinematography and score, although the score is used a bit weirdly at parts. Steven Yeun brings a great performance, but doesn't overshadow anybody in this amazing cast. If I had to say something negative about it, then it would be that it contains a few scenes and a few lines of dialogue that feel a little bit out of place, but nothing that bothered me too much. And it is a fantastic film. And maybe from a more objective or a technical perspective, maybe the best nominee in this category, but there is one film that I like just a little bit more. Here, like I said in the beginning, remember that I only watched all the films once. Now, if I went for a perfect mix of what I liked the most and what I think is the best, as I said, the win should probably go to Minari, but after I watched Promising Young Woman, I was stunned. And I said that I watched all the films once, because the film might not be as shocking on second watch, but Promising Young Woman on first watch left one of the biggest impressions a movie has ever left on me. Definitely peculiar, definitely highly stylized, and also kind of satirical, and not for everyone, but this film was, for me at least, pure euphoria from start to finish, and it features an incredible commentary on an urgent issue, all covered by its stylized candy-coated exterior. A fantastic revenge story that has a controversial, but in my opinion, incredible ending. From the astounding and complex performance of Carey Mulligan, the fun performance of Bo Burnham, and the banging soundtrack, which is also purposeful, as well as the immaculate energy, the structuring of the story, the quirky and extraordinary cinematography and framing, Emerald Fennell's direction, with these fantastic actors and her phenomenal dramatic but also humorous writing, which reminds me a bit of the way the Coen brothers would write their films, and a deeply complicated commentary on sexual harassment, rape, and trauma, all encrypted in some great symbolism and metaphors. Sure, some might say that it has a sort of lack of empathy for its subject matter, but I feel like this is the filmmaker's vision, and she puts something immensely urgent and significant into something that on its surface is also kind of fun, and I can respect that. I don't think it is the best movie on the list, but it is certainly my favorite of them all. And that is it. I wish I could talk about all the categories, but I don't have enough time and I don't think it's that necessary for this video. But I will link a Twitter thread that I made in the description where you can see my opinion on all categories. I will also be live tweeting the Oscars on Sunday, so if you might care to see what I think of the Oscars as they are happening, just go to the live thread on Twitter. This last little category that I put in this video is what I think was kind of snubbed from the Oscars, what they just left out, or in which categories something was left out. So let's just quickly go over the 5 films that I think were kind of snubbed in one way or another. Number 1, I'm thinking of Ending Things was easily my favorite and the best film of last year. It's another masterpiece by Charlie Kaufman, which I don't know why again. I guess it's too high concept, maybe a bit too abstract and confusing for the Academy, but it is easily the best film of the year. I loved it so much and it was snubbed so hard. Number 2 is Da 5 Bloods. I think it was pretty underrated. A lot of people didn't like it at all when it came out, but I think Spike should have been nominated for directing and the movie itself maybe also for Best Picture. Number 3, Fireball, Visitors from Darker Worlds. Werner Herzog documentary that might just be the best documentary of the year. I obviously haven't seen all documentaries, but Herzog is always awesome with documentaries, and I think this is one of his best. He presents those like weird rocks from space like it's the most interesting thing that it could ever be, and it might be. Number 4, Never Rarely Sometimes Always. I have a full review on my channel about this film, why I don't think it's perfect and why I think it's flawed. I don't think it deserved something like Best Picture, but I think at least Sidney Flanagan's performance deserved a nomination for Best Leading Actress. And number 5 might just be a bit out of left field, but The Secret Garden wasn't an amazing film, but the cinematography was some of the best of the entire year, and it definitely deserved a nom. But that's it. I don't know if I'll do a follow-up video on this. Maybe not. We'll see. Anyway, I hope the Academy picks some good films. And maybe pick one of the top 4 that are listed. Yeah, anyway, I think this video is already too long for my standards. So, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more. Because I don't upload that frequently, you might miss it. But yeah, thank you for watching. Bye bye.
Yeah, I think you're ending.
I am so glad Jake has found someone.
Soon this will all be a distant memory.
Who's this?
It's me.